and welcome to E-commerce Quick Fix, Cross-Border Magazine official podcast. Today is a happy day. We're going to be talking with a real amazing guy, which is Oscar Nogueras. He's an expert on localization and translation and the founder of Ontranslation. Oscar, how are you? How's everything?
I'm very fine, thank you, Frank. I'm just very looking forward to this conversation. It's going to be very interesting, I'm sure.
We too, because we're going to be talking about a really hot topic, which is localization. You know, everybody talks about localization, especially in our global e-commerce scenario right now.
Mhm.
But let's start by addressing the elephant in the room. Is really necessary to localize or not? Is this a myth?
It is not a myth. It is actually a must, I would say, especially if you want to do things right and if you want to sell your products or services cross border. Having in mind that you need to generate this trust in order to, like attract new potential customers in other markets.
And do you feel like actually having the content in their native language, it's a powerful trust builder for any specific brand? Like for example, if I'm going to be selling in the United States, obviously I have to have English, which is kind of the lingua franca right now, is the language
Yeah.
that everybody speaks. But if I'm selling in Germany, could I do well just using English, or do I need to use German?
Well, especially in Germany, I would
Especially
say.
Germany, yeah.
I would
Yeah, it
say,
was not
yeah,
chosen by mistake, you know.
yeah. In Europe, I would say like two specific markets that they, culturally speaking, they would look into your brand like more nicely if you speak to them in their native languages is Germany and France. They have this trust level for foreign brands up to here, whereas maybe we Spaniards we have it up to there. So we are more trusting. We trust brands, and especially if they are foreign brands, we trust them better than the Germans and the French. I would say,
I'm not
generally
gonna
speaking.
I'm not gonna go into details because I totally agree with you. That's a cultural issue that we have as Spaniards. Unfortunately, we don't trust the Spanish things as much as we trust the foreigners. But
Yeah.
re- regardless of
This
that,
this
that
also
world.
happens. This also happens sometimes, and depending on the verticals, in some Asian markets. Even, I mean, the other day I was speaking like with a colleague, and we were discussing about this in terms of cosmetics, and sometimes for a foreign brand to get into some Asian countries. Uh, they wouldn't even translate their the packet and the package, so they would see so that it's coming
Oh,
from
for France,
wherever,
or yeah.
and then they would put like a sticker on top of it. So it's not just like, we're gonna do localize it, and then we're not gonna spend loads of money on like a proper, reprinting or whatever. But it is actually a
A marketing
strategy,
strategy, yeah.
to you know to to show that like foreign brands are better. So
So that opens an entire avenue of possibilities right now, because many people don't think about translation as an actual marketing strategy, and it
mhm.
is part of the marketing strategy.
It is
Uh,
definitely, or
but
it should be.
it should be.
It's sometimes like I'm very shocked when like very big companies, they do spend very little on communication, on translation or localization, and I'm just amazed by I mean, how comes? I mean, and it is proven that it's gonna, like, the return on investment is going to be so high if you do things properly with a cross-border strategy than if you do it just like Google Translate or ChatGPT, whatever. I'm sure that we're going to be speaking about this later on.
Yes, of course. You actually just went ahead to one of the other, minefields that we have right now on localization and translation, which is the use of AI. Uh, does that thing work actually? Let's be absolutely honest. I mean, can
Mhm.
you actually use artificial intelligence for translations? It's something that has a decent level of quality. Is this an absolute substitution of a human factor? There is a lot to delve into it. Let's start little by little with the very basic. Does this work right now in 2024?
It works to a certain extent, and for some languages. For example, I would say that if you want to localize or translate into English, um, okay, depending on the type of content, it's good enough, you know, because we have to bear in mind that 93% of the materials that the AI or ChatGPT or OpenAI, whatever, has been trained with has been with English content. So obviously, the English uh, content that is produced by AI is going to be way better than that content that is, into German or Polish or like Swedish or whatever, So that would be like my first thing to mention. And the second thing would be, I do trust, obviously, in the human in the loop. Okay, so even if you do, or if you do use machine translation or AI translation, you would always need someone to check that that is okay or that is not okay, because otherwise, you can have like very bad experiences landing into a new foreign market that no one knows about you, but the first thing that they know about you is that you have done several mistakes that may cause a drama, so yeah,
Do
I
you have
mean,
like any story that obviously don't mention the brand if you don't want to,
I
but can
can,
you
yeah,
share it
why
with
not?
us a few examples of this kind of
Okay,
mistakes?
one of the best examples of this, and well, I have two. Um, I mean, I have more, but I'm I'm going to tell you two. First one is 2015. Okay, so 10 years ago ish. Zara, sorry, Zara people, they did machine translation to get into Germany for their e-commerce, and they caused this so much drama on the German speaking users, but the Germans, because they would translate um, um, like using machine translation without human proofreading. The actual case was a bracelet that in Spanish is esclava, okay,
Oh
which
my god.
means a certain type of bracelet,
Yeah,
okay, and they did translate that as slave
slave.
uh,
Yeah.
bracelet. So, like the equivalent in German, obviously.
Yeah, it's a kind of a, in Spanish we call it esclava because it kind of, it's like the shackles, the slaves
Yeah,
used to use. I mean,
yeah,
it's like a
yeah,
small shackle.
yeah. But
But
there is not.
it's not, you won't
Yeah,
translate like that.
yeah, but there is not this cultural burden that they have in Germany. So this is what we don't want to
And go
our
figure,
brands to
that's
happen.
Sara. It's, I mean, this is a
Zara,
mistake that happened not
yeah,
because of lack of resources, because
yeah,
Sara has money for
yeah. It
proper
was it
translation.
was 2015. Obviously, it's not like Zara nowadays. I'm sure that they're doing things right, and they did learn,
Their lesson.
from their mistakes. But however, it's one of the examples I always use when prompted about this. And the second example would be also using machine translation without human proofreading in Amazon.
Oh my god.
When Amazon in 2020 they opened their marketplace in Sweden, they did use machine translation without human proofreading, and it was in the news everywhere. I mean, anyone listening or watching us, just Google that, and then you would get loads of, newspapers and media outlets just like saying, "Oh my God, they have." I don't know, translated frying pans by feminine toys.
Oh
So
god.
imagine. So obviously, we're talking about Zara and Amazon, which are like two very big, amazing brands. Blah 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 blah. So imagine that you are not. If that happened to them, and they had like a very big downfall in their revenue, and like a really bad image for some time. Imagine that this can happen to any brand. So we need to really think straight and think strategy. And obviously, if you have like an e-commerce with loads of products, you cannot do um, human translation
For the
for all of
entirety of
them.
all the
For
products.
all of
Yeah.
them. But come on, let's concentrate on those Pareto rule 20% of your catalog. Do things right there, and then use any lower or tier one service like post editing, no? Human machine translation, and human proofreading for the rest of the 80% of the catalog. So it's not just one size fits all solution. So we need to really strategize and say what's the best solution for each market and each brand. No?
Now, Oscar, there is a question that a question and I believe that I constantly listen and hear from American CEOs and managers. American, when I say American, I mean the United States. I mean, I'm not talking about the entirety, the rest of the continent,
Yeah.
which they obviously ignore most of the time. But I'm talking exclusively about the people from the United States.
Okay.
When I heard something I'm gonna start selling in the in the European Union, but I'm gonna use English because at the end of the day, all of them understand English. This is a mistake, obviously, isn't it?
It is definitely, and especially, it happens the same with Europeans looking into selling into Latam block, or Americans or North Americans wanting to sell into Europe as a block. You know, Obviously, you might want to test the waters. To do an MVP, probably by just by using or letting your catalog be seen in other countries by and using just English. But the amount of sales that you're gonna be losing by not speaking the language and the culture of the country is going to be huge. So, for example, now talking Amazon, for example, there is this honeymoon period, which is the actual period of time that Amazon grants new brands when they upload their products. And this period, Amazon like grants this like a big push for the brands, for new brands, in order for them to like to get the first reviews, whatever. So if you actually take into account this like nice period and this push period Amazon is giving you, so why not doing it in the native language? So it's going to be better than using English, which Amazon is going to say, okay, why are you using English to sell in Italy, for example? So um, just think strategy. This is my summary. Mhm.
Now, there is another thing regarding localization. It's that how deep should we go down the rabbit hole? I mean, because there is English and there is English. I mean, obviously, for all the people that is watching the podcast right now or listening to the podcast, you can clearly notice that Oscar has a British Queen English, the proper Queen English. And I have more like the American English, street English from the United States. There are differences. In Spanish is the same thing. We have different variations of Spanish. When you localize, should you go deep as that? Should you go as for the different variations of Italian? For example, the Lombard Italian from the north of Italy versus the Bari Italian from the south, or should you just do a standard translation into Spanish? Do you need to localize to a regional level, or is this not needed?
It would. it would be a question of just like what you learn from the brief when you do a brief with with the brand. I have this sentence, this phrase, which is, if there is no brief, there is no paradise. So you need to start with a brief. If by some other chances your product or service is going to be your target, or your buying personas are going to be from a certain region of a certain country, obviously you would need to go that deep. Otherwise, just do like a proper linguistically, grammatically, culturally correct Spanish, for example, and that's okay. Okay. However, when talking localization, you always try. I mean, you would always try to get as deep
as
as
possible.
possible. Um, because at the end of the day, what you want is to people to engage and to connect with the brand, and so you should use these like very, not colloquial, but like really cultural, based expressions, so the user and your potential customer, they realize that they are talking to them, not to in general. So if I want to engage with a brand, I want the brand to talk to me, not to my neighbor. you know so localize as much as possible, always.
Precisely talking about engagement, tell us a little bit about the history of Ontranslation, why it was created, what was the thought process behind it, and the lessons that you learned, and
Hmm.
why it's important to to go for experts and just don't do this by yourself. Don't use DeepL and just copy paste whatever is there.
Hmm.
Tell us a little bit about your background, your history, and why Ontranslation has been so important for so many brands.
Hmm. I mean, you can use DeepL, but within a strategy. Okay.
within some logic.
Yeah, within some logic, definitely. So on translation, we are a multilingual communication and translation company. We've been on since 2011, I think. So it is our 14th anniversary this year.
Wow, it's been a
Uh,
while. I mean, it's
it's
been
been
a
a while.
long
It's been a
time.
while already. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, like pre-pandemic, and like more way back. And we started like from the very beginning, like trying to help companies, especially with their websites. So website localization. We very quickly move on to e-commerce, which is one of our bigger sectors nowadays. And I would say that what makes us different is precisely taking into account all these cultural aspects, plus services like SEO translation, which we are experts on, I could say. Um, and so, because at the end of the day, obviously, we do some projects for hard copy brochures and this old marketing guerrilla sort of thing. However, we are basically focused on digital communication. So that means social media, e-commerce, marketplaces, and websites. So this is basically our focus, and we have been working on this since like the early ages. So yeah.
SEO translation. Please, let's talk about that because I've been in some horrible meetings with clients saying things like, no, I already have the keywords in English. It's this keyword. I'm like, yeah, but that doesn't necessarily will translate well
Yeah,
to
yeah,
whatever other language.
yeah.
Let's explain a little bit about that, what it is, and why it's so important.
Hmm. SEO translation, basically, the objective is to attract customers, new customers from other markets, by doing a proper SEO, like international SEO, content SEO, and also gaining trust, because at the end of the day, SEO translation is localization, is sort of copywriting, and so you have to gain their trust. And obviously, what you want with SEO translation is sales. Okay, so traffic, trust, sales. Okay, so the three T's, I would say. And it is actually a service that, although it may seem new, because like it's become a bit popular, like lately, it's been on for ages, I would say. If you look into Google Trends and you just put there SEO translation, you would realize that it starts popping in 2005. So it's like 20 years ago. Although
From the very beginning, from the stone age of
from the
internet.
stone age of internet, okay? So obviously this, I reckon that the digital marketers realize that precisely, mm, translating keywords, it doesn't work. Having the same strategy, like digital strategy for content in two markets, it doesn't work. So you would need like a in between, in the middle thing that would merge three actual aspects, which is localization with cultural differences at the very base. Then we have transcreation, which is the mix of localization and copywriting. This creating content or adapting content thanks to a brief to engage, no, the emotional part of language and culture, and obviously another component of SEO. So SEO translation is these three things, these three T's, no, and yeah, it works out.
One of the things I noticed that while I was working with one of my clients is we were trying to do a translation of e-commerce. Now it happens that in regional, even there inside regional variations inside the same language, which is
Hmm.
Spanish,
Yeah.
if we are aiming for the correct keyword or the most profitable keyword for the
Hmm.
client, it happens that e-commerce in English can be translated as tienda online, tienda web, or e-commerce.
Hmm.
Again, the standard
Oh,
English.
y comercio
Now,
electrónico
o
even,
comercio
yeah.
electrónico,
Yeah.
yeah. So depending on the region of the Spanish speaking audience that you have, you
Hmm.
might be more inclined to use one or the other. Now, those own translation provide this service to clients. Are you able to actually accurately predict and study the market that they want to impact and say, hey, no, for this specific market, you need this
Hmm.
variation of that same terminology, of that same concept?
Yeah, obviously, I mean, if now talking about this very specific example, um, obviously, if you need to translate or do an SEO translation, whatever, for marketers, you would use maybe e-commerce because most of us we use
Yeah, we
e-commerce.
will use e-commerce,
But
yeah.
if we use maybe, I mean, if we
For general
whatever,
public.
yeah, if whatever the service is your target, a general public, maybe you would need tienda online or whatever. So, but having this, uh, Google algorithms nowadays are very intelligent. They know that all of them are synonyms, and then if you use them, no matter where, you would referring to the same search intent. So at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. However, like user experience wise, you would need to really use those terms that resonate, that engage your buying persona. Uh, if it happens that you're just like focusing on a specific target or portion of the segment of the market, then you would use one or other term and then use the others as synonyms, to make the translation richer and more semantically sound.
Mhm. Let's talk about transcreation, which is a part that it's normally ignored. When
Hmm.
when translation services are required, most of the companies
Hmm.
don't really understand that sometimes to do a proper job, you have to actually transcreate. Now,
Hmm.
what is this all about, and why is so important, and what should a company be aiming at when doing a transcreation?
Hmm. I mean, transcreation is or appeared, emerged when with translation services for advertising. Okay, actually, transcreation is this mix of, or this combination of localization and copywriting. And we would use transcreation when a good localization is not enough. Okay. So when I say good localization, meaning when you translate something, even adding this cultural layer into it, it doesn't work. So you would need like to even create a new sentence that has nothing to do if you look from like original target, but they communicate the same emotion. They make you click, you know, because at the end of the day, transcreation, talking about digital marketing, what we want is the users to make an action. So you would use transcreation for these really nice slogans or uh, short copies, or even sometimes like buttons. Uh, so you are like sort of like asking the user to do a certain action, okay? Because there is no transcreation if there is no emotion and action. So you need those two components to take into account.
I remember a case that was from a Japanese brand. We are not going to mention it to prevent any issues, but it was a Japanese brand that created a slogan in Japan that was in English, roughly translated, will be like "Find your ikigai." Your ikigai,
Hmm.
the
Yeah,
ikigai is a
yeah.
concept that they have in their culture. Now, obviously, nowadays is widely spread, especially between us marketers and people that are dealing with businesses. We know what ikigai is, but at the time it was released, this slogan, it was in the 80s. Nobody knew what ikigai was. So it was like, how the hell do we translate this, because in
Hmm.
English, if you just copy paste find your ikigai, it will be like what are
They
you talking
wouldn't they
about?
wouldn't understand, no?
They
Uh-huh.
couldn't understand. How would you translate that? How would you do the translation, like, for example, for English or for Spanish?
Yeah, it would be just like mm, you would you would need to do like a really good brief on the brand, okay? Because I don't know which brand you are. I mean, I know the example, but I
It was a
can't remember the
motorcycle
brand.
brand. Let's start with an
Ah,
H.
okay,
With an
okay,
H of Honda,
okay, okay,
that's
okay,
it.
okay. So having that in mind, okay, you would need to do like a competitor analysis. What is your competition in the local country doing? How is their communication? And then do something like very or not very you know different, okay? In this case you would say not even fine, but like, yeah, or maybe find your goal in life, or find your goal, or your I don't know, something
Well,
like that, you
it
know.
is. It is. I think I also agree with you. That should be the correct approach. This bit of information is a curiosity from the obscure history of marketing. At the end of the day, in real life, they weren't unable to do it. So they run a different campaign in the United States.
Hmm.
It was to sell one of the Honda scooters that they used
Okay.
for the city, and it was the ikigai concept behind the scooter, because it was like the perfect place to be. The
Yeah,
perfect solution was
yeah,
that it was the
yeah.
ikigai motorcycle.
Hmm.
It allowed you to combine speed, reliability,
Hmm.
a low price for
Hmm.
mobility and comfort and all the stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is so important, transcreation, that it can actually destroy an entirely
Oh
successful
yeah,
campaign.
definitely. In fact, what you have just like asked me, it's very bad because like when you do, for example, if we talk like different tiers of linguistic services, we have like machine translation, which is click done. Then we have post editing, which is human proofreading of machine translation. The amount of time is longer than a click, obviously. Then you have human translation, then you have localization, and then you have transcreation. And even to transcreate that sentence, that slogan, if you would ask me to do it in Spanish, it may take me 2 days.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard as
You
nails.
see, so it's not quick. Come on, transcreate me this. No,
Do you feel like
so
companies and CEOs understand this complexity? Are they
no,
aware of it?
no,
No, they are
no,
not.
no. Sometimes, I mean, when I find one of those amazing clients that When I say amazing, not just because they are big or small, which they are usually small, the good ones. It's just because when they come to you with a brief, with some like really open mind of, okay, tell me what's the best solution for me, you know? Because sometimes at the end of the day, I think that communication is so overrated. I mean, especially international community or intercultural communication, you know, I mean, it's so important. I mean, you need to really think twice before, you know, installing um, Google Translate or others in a website and just like, that's it, you know? And
Let's drop here a pro tip for everybody that is listening. If you go to search an expert opinion and an expert support, pay attention to the expert. That will be the
yeah,
pro
yeah,
tip.
yeah, that would be the,
Otherwise, it just
yeah.
doesn't make any sense, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. It's amazing that, you know, as I said before, you know, it's so shocking that even like big brands, you know, I tend to, because I love teaching, you know, I also teach at the university. So part of my job is, you know, to educate, you know, the clients as well and to explain them. But, you know, it's like, come on, I mean, it's 2024. Come on, you know.
No, 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 no. I mean,
But this is
it's
my ikigai.
it's your ikigai. That's right, precisely. No, no, Oscar. Now to wrap it up a little bit, if you have to give one advice to a company that it's listening to you right now, and this is going to be a long answer, I know, but can you create like a huge, like a massive, like a big advice that it will be like a step by step
Mhm,
advice on how to start your localization and your translation process to be successful? I mean, how to
mhm,
do this in a proper way. You already gave an idea of where to start, which
mhm.
is the briefing. No briefing, no paradise. I love that.
Yeah.
But what else should they do, and how they should map this whole process?
I would definitely think about what type of content. When I say what type of content, is not just e-commerce. No, because an e-commerce it has different parts. So it's not as important the homepage than one of the footer pages that no one is going to see, or the product page or the category page. So think about, you know, different types of content. Also think about, where do you want to go? Okay, what's the target country? What's their culture? What is um, required to do a good localization for that country? What is their trust level in that country in terms of communication, or but not just like text, but also images, blah 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 blah. And basically, type of content, um, target market, and then you would have like a combination of different services. So once you have all this into, you know, on the table, then you can start like strategizing and saying, okay, I'm going to go to this market first, and then I'm going to be using this service for this part of the web or the e-commerce or the listing from Amazon, whatever. So it's all a question of combination of services. Where are you also in your internationalization process? Because it's not the same a brand that is not present anywhere, but a brand that is also present in Germany, and that one wants to go to Holland. Easier, you see, because, you know, probably logistics is going to be easy. So, you know, think first. That would be first
Think
step.
first.
Okay, first think, and then, you know, go down strategizing, having those aspects into account.